What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JAR. JAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. It's our weekly show where we go over the magic stories as they're posted on Wizards' website. Now this week, as with the next week and the next week after, seemingly, we're not going to have magic stories because we're getting closer to the holiday season. It's towards the end of the year. They're going to be waiting until the new year begins for Rivals of Ixalan stories to start. Last week we had a little bit of a treat with an Unstable story, but we are still in Unstable season with the release of Unstable coming soon and all the cards now having been previewed, etc. So what we are going to be doing on this show this week, as you can tell from the title down below, we are going to be reviewing Unstable Scraps Part 1 by Mark Rosewater. Now, as I mentioned, that includes next week and the week after, and there are 3 parts to this series, so give you a general idea of what we are doing for the next few weeks. So, surprise. But Unstable Scraps Parts 1 and 2, or Part 1, I should say, there really isn't much to talk about with a quick review at the beginning. If you like Unstable and you want to know more about some of the cards, Mark doesn't talk about all of them. I mean, we haven't seen Part 3 yet. It hasn't been released yet, so... but from looking at Parts 1 and 2, if Part 3 is equivalent in size, it will be physically impossible for him to talk about every card in the set. It just doesn't work that way. Plus, he might not have interesting enough things to say about each and every card, so it's only the ones that he seemed to care the most about.
Yeah.
Usually in our quick reviews, we tell you whether to go read it or not. We're not summarizing here even now in an article review, and if it's something that you're interested in, I would say go read it. If you don't care about Unstable, you don't care about Silver Bordered, you don't care about Mark Rosewater maybe. I mean, there might be some people out there. I'm not that guy. But, you know, all of those things go into, or should go into, you deciding whether or not you want to go read this article. But in my opinion, I enjoyed it. It was informative.
I would say definitely go and read it if you like creativity, if you like flavor, if you like fun. If you don't like fun, then I can't help you.
You've come to the right place.
I can't help you because you have larger issues perhaps than...
There are people who might not enjoy Unstable as a set. They might be people who prefer more competitive Magic. This is not competitive Magic. Yeah, this is, as Amy said, fun Magic.
Even if you're steadfast all the way about competitive Magic, I think there's still a little spot. You know, there's still a place for this in the scheme of Magic.
I would agree.
You know, it might not be your favorite thing, but I think that it's arguably something you could still at least like a few of the cards.
Oh, yeah.
Because they'll make some sort of reference to something that'll make you laugh.
Well, and I will also say, now that we're discussing formats a little bit, it kind of goes into the full review. That's my opinion on the shorter review. Amy thinks go read it if you enjoy fun. My point still is if you have no interest whatsoever in Unstable, then maybe this article isn't for you. But I will also say that if you are interested in Commander, there are a lot of shout-outs for Commander players in these articles. So I would encourage it, even if you don't like Unstable, if you like Commander, I would go read it as well. But that brings us into the full review itself. And the reason that I start off here is I don't remember the exact dates. I apologize. I am not a Commander player, but I encourage you to look it up if you are. There has been some information released that for a period of time, it might just be until 2018, I don't really remember. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's until the next banned and restricted announcement, which I don't remember the date on that. Like I said, please go look that up for yourselves. But until that next banned and restricted announcement is released, silver bordered cards, unglued, unhinged, and unstable, will be legal to use in Commander. Which I think is a great idea.
That's super cool.
I think it's awesome.
But...
well, so there are a lot of people who have been... Well, no, I don't want to say a lot. That's not fair. I have seen people who are complaining about it. I've seen people who are attempting to make up combos that make you or allow you to take over your opponent's turn and make them rip up all their cards because there's a card that allows you to rip up the card and then something happens, but there's a duplication effect where every card is that card. And so you take over your opponent's turn, make all of their cards a duplicate of the card that you have to rip up, and then you rip up all their cards. Don't do that.
But why?
Don't do that.
Why would someone do that? Like, is that like, I hate unstable? Or is that like, because it kind of sounds like it's really contradictory.
I think, look, it may have very well been a joke, right? It may have been, hey, now that silver bordered cards are legal, there is a format and a real possibility that you could make your entire opponent, your opponent rip up their entire deck. I don't, like I said, I don't play in that world, so I can't really speak to it. All I can say is, in this article, it was Mark Rosewater, we talked about that already. Mark talked quite a bit about design space for legendary creatures, design space for trying to make these creatures relevant to Commander. For example, the big idea, I'm going a little bit out of order, but the big idea had the hybrid mana symbols in their activated ability cost. And the reason for that was for Commander, so that Commander players could put that as a commander in a deck that would play red and black, as opposed to making it just a mono red deck. He talks later, I think it's next week, about the Squirrel Lord as well, purposefully not being legendary. So just the concept of the fact that you can see that even in Unstable, Wizards cared enough about Commander to design cards purposefully for Commander players, or at least with them in mind, which is really awesome, right? Just because I don't play the format doesn't mean I don't appreciate its existence and think that the players who enjoy it and the format deserve to be recognized by Wizards and by the sets that they make.
Right.
I think that those shout-outs are really awesome. So, onto we touched on some of them that we thought warranted us talking about. So not every card that Mark reviewed we're going to talk about, but just so that you have an idea of where we're going with this. So the first card that he talked about that we're talking about is Animate Library. And this is where Mark first introduced the idea of something that he talks about a couple of times over the course of talking about these cards, which is they start from Black Border. Black Border meaning just any normal set that would be released for Standard, for Modern, Legacy, etc.
In terms of rules.
Right, in terms of,
what they think of what's allowed,
right,
stuff like that.
In terms of whether they can make that card work in Black Border, and if not, does it just automatically belong in Silver Border? And he talked about the fact that Animate Library used to be a thing that they were trying to do way back in the day. And it didn't really work out, it didn't really have the right design space, and I agree with the part where he mentioned that it would require a lot of counting. Yeah. Because if you've ever played a mill strategy or been the recipient of a mill strategy deck, you know that very often you are counting how many cards are left in your library. You're asking your opponent to count how many cards are left in the library. Please tell me how many cards you have left, because you want to know how close you are to decking them out. You want to know the number of cards remaining so that you can plan your strategy accordingly. With Animate Library, since it cares about the number of cards in your library, it's the concept of, okay, how often are you going to have to count? You know, are the players going to be good enough to be able to keep track? Is that going to make more time and take more time in the games? Which, Unstable, I think, warrants a longer playtime. This is not the kind of format where everybody's just going to be like, well, I'm going to build an aggro deck so I can win the tournament. It's like,
yeah, no.
That's
not the point of playing Unstable.
If you do that and it works and that's really what you want to do, congrats, I guess. I know for me, when I go play Unstable, I'm going to be looking to do the most silly things possible, because that's literally the purpose of the format.
Right.
Is to do silly, fun, as Amy said it, things. Bring your friends. Have them be your partner with Better Than One, or have them take over your opponent in Kindslaver, or you know, pick a random guy at the game store. And sure, maybe I'll be a little preachy and a little sappy here. things like Kindslaver, things like the cards that ask you to go high five people, or the better than one card where you need a partner. If you don't have someone to bring with you, or you don't have a friend who's there, or your friend is in the middle of another game, there's probably that one guy, if not more than one guy, who are at your local game store who just kind of sit off by themselves in between rounds, and maybe they play on their DS or something, or whatever, or they're sorting cards. But this is the opportunity to meet new people. It's the opportunity to have some fun, because you don't know, maybe that guy sitting on the side really would love to take over your opponent's turn. Now, there's always the possibility of them killing you when you give them the opportunity to take over your opponent's turn. If that was something that your opponent could have done, if they see that line also, they could just outright kill you. But it's the idea of community and relationships and etc. And I don't need to harp on that too much. Most of you get that already. You see the possibilities there. That's just a suggestion, and I feel like that's a lot of what Unstable is trying to get you to do, is interact and have a good time.
Yeah, like I said, fun. I mean, that guy off in the corner probably isn't having as much fun as you are if you're there with a friend or a couple of friends. He's just kind of waiting for the next chance to play cards, and the only people he's really interacting with normally is whoever his opponent is at the time, and that gives him a lot more opportunity to just spend more time with people.
And that is us partially digressing, but also in reality, I mean, this is something that Mark talked about. He talked about the concept of making you want to interact with other players and things like that. So that is something that was brought up in the article. We're not just completely going off the rails here. But so then we move on to our first legendary creature, at least that we're going to be talking about and that Mark talked about, in Baron von Count. Now, Mark took some time to talk about a lot of the different commanders or legendary creatures that are the leaders of the Legion of Doom. Is that what it was? I'm always going to mess it up. A Legion of Dastardly Doom. That's what it is. Because Legion of Doom is totally already a thing in comic books. Anyway, but yes, the Legion of Dastardly Doom has multiple legendary creatures as their leaders, who you see come up in the cards, which is great. And the first one we talk about here is Baron von Count, who you do a countdown on the card with the art in the background behind him, and once that countdown bypasses 1, which is where it would go to 0, but it really just goes back to 5, you destroy target player. And Mark told a really good story about wanting destroy target player to be on Door to Nothingness. Now, I'm familiar with Door to Nothingness. I used to play it in an old casual deck that I had, which was a lot of fun because it comes into play tapped. When you untap it, you tap 2 mana of every color, so 10 mana total, and you tap it and you destroy target player. But really, it's target player loses the game, but Mark wanted it to say destroy target creature or player. And he talked about the fact that there was a rules manager at the time who was like, that's not a thing. We already have a thing for when a player would automatically lose, and just says target player loses the game, so why make another thing? It was an interesting thing to read, and
it was funny.
Yes.
It was funny.
Yes, it was very funny.
And it was a good way to kind of relate a little bit. Like maybe you've had that conversation with your boss about how creative you were trying to be with whatever project you were working on.
Or a teacher at school even.
Yeah.
And it's the concept of, creativity versus practicality. And I know I struggle with that. We talk about that kind of stuff all the time, because it's like, ooh, I really want to do this. And it's like, yeah, but it would be so much easier if you just did this instead. It's like, yeah, but that's not as fun. And it's like, yeah, but it takes less time and maybe costs less money, or whatever the argument or the discussion happens to be. But so this was an example of that, of like, yeah, but it would be funny and players would love it. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't make any sense.
But it doesn't fit the criteria that we normally stick to for stuff.
Right. And so destroy target player, while everybody would get it, I feel like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some people would be like, I don't know what that means. To me, it's pretty obvious. If you've been destroyed as a player, you lose, right? That just, to me, that makes sense.
I mean, that particular wordage is just so flavorfully perfect for an unset. So I, for one, am glad that they held on to it.
Oh, I agree.
Until an unset, because I think that it brings more fun to an unset and makes things a little less confusing and odd in normal tournament play, I would assume, for players and for, people who need to know the rules. And
right. And I believe it was Mark Gottlieb. I could be wrong, but I believe that was who the rules manager was. And I fully agree with Mark Gottlieb that it's a little silly to have door to nothingness say destroy target creature or player, because why the hell would you ever choose creature? You just win if you choose player. So it made sense to me, but at the same time I understood Mark's argument of it would just be funny. Right? Nobody would choose creature,
but players would like it.
It's just the concept of destroy target creature or player would just be really funny. So, yeah. Then we move on to Blurry Beetle. I am a guy who I like Beetles. I'm not in love with them, and I have all of them, and I've memorized all of them, and I can talk to you about all of them. I used to play with, I think, bubbling Beetles in one of my casual decks, but there are others that I never used, but I was at least aware of. And now we have another Beetle and another unset, which makes sense. It's nice to see them back. But it's one this time, and it's Blurry Beetle. And Mark talked about the design space that led up to that, and it started with the Minotaur card in Unglued, I believe it was, as opposed to Unhinged. I'm trying to remember the card in my mind. I believe it was Unglued, where it had Denim Walk, meaning that your opponent couldn't block it if they were wearing anything denim. And what Mark said was they wanted to make a card similar to that, but that didn't incentivize players to remove their pants. Which, as a guy who wears denim jeans almost exclusively when I go to Magic tournaments, I thank you for that, because I don't want to have to debate whether or not to take my pants off to try to block a creature. Now, it's a 1/1, so it's probably still not an issue, but regardless. This time, I still appreciate it because the player who is defending it can't block it unless they were wearing glasses when the card was cast. So you can't just pull them out of your pocket and throw them on real quick to be able to block. It has to be when the card was cast, so you won't know unless it's game 2, for example, and then you're like, all right, I'm just going to wear these fake glasses so I can block your million Blurry Beetles or whatever.
Sunglasses.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. It counts. So, at least as far as I know, I'm not a judge, but I think it sounds right. That sounds like it counts. But anyway, so I appreciate that. He said it also used to be beards, that somebody with a beard couldn't block it. I appreciate also that they didn't make that the case. But I also understand, he said Elaine Chase was the one who warned him and said that's a little uninclusive because I think Mark was the one who used the phrase, for the most part, only men can grow beards, which is a little sad, but it's true. But it also, I understand that it's still, even though it is only hurtful to someone with a beard, I can still understand why you wouldn't want something so polarizing on a card. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Because
I don't have any.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first.
I have zero thoughts on that.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I still appreciate it nonetheless because I want to be able to block it, and I wear my glasses all the time. So, there you go. I get to block Blurry Beetle now, even though I wouldn't have been able to before because I'm not shaving my beard to block a 1/1.
Nah.
No. Then we have Buzzing Wackadoodle. I love this card. I probably love it too much. But looking at this card, the strategy, Mark didn't have to tell me the strategy behind making this card because I could read it and figure it out for myself, which I think makes it that much better as a card because you can see exactly where they were going with their design space for that card. I love it. I love that it's a modal choice. You choose whack or doodle, and your opponent does the same thing. It's a mini game in a mind game where you are trying to figure out which one your opponent's going to pick. But are you going to pick just because you want to pick, or are you going to pick because you think your opponent's going to pick a certain way, and so you want to pick the one that's either the same as them or opposite them, depending on the choice that you want? It's brilliant. I love it so much, because if you both choose the same thing, you get that effect. If you both choose differently, you get a third effect in Buzz, which allows you to draw a card. Whack allows you to make your opponent lose 2 life. Doodle allows you to gain 3. And Buzz, I think you have to tap 2, and you tap it, and you draw a card. That's great. Buzz is probably the most sought after ability, but at the same time, making your opponent lose 2 life is not nothing. And so, for me personally, I will probably always choose Whack. I don't know, unless I'm like in need of gaining life. Life gain is traditionally not beneficial. Unless you're in some kind of a life gain strategy, but kind of on its own, a single life gain card will likely not put you over the top. There are obviously fringe situations where it would, and I'm not telling you not to go that way. But for me personally, and if you're playing against me, congrats, you watched this video, and that's fine. I will always choose Whack. Always. Because it's just more beneficial to me, where if my opponent chooses Whack, I can make them lose life, but if not, then I get to draw cards. So, buzzing Wackadoodle, also brilliant design space. I loved it. I love being able to sit there and I know that, Amy, you don't play as extensively as I do, but did you have any opinions on this card? I know I just gushed over it for the last 2 minutes.
I pretty much don't have many opinions on most of these cards, because I can only really look at them from a sort of flavor standpoint. Yeah, I mean, I can say, oh, the flavor works really well with the mechanics, or I think this is really creative, or it's really cool, but I don't have too much of a concept of how cards will play. So I can't really weigh in on those types of things.
Okay, well then, since we're speaking about flavor, and we did not do this on purpose, but since we're speaking on flavor, let's move on to capital offense. Because that part of the article was solely flavor-based, I feel like. So I don't know if you want to start or you want me to start. But
no, you can go ahead.
Capital Offense, if you guys haven't seen it, is a card that is written entirely in lowercase. Which, to be completely honest, as a guy who's been playing Magic for a very long time, super unsettling. Oh God, yeah. Looking at that card, like there's no capital letters in it. That bothers me.
Is it unsettling to players, or is it unsettling to you?
Yeah, I do have OCD, but it is unsettling.
Huh?
I didn't even think you would go along with it by the little nod. I thought you would have just been annoyed. You were just annoyed after you made that noise. Anyway,
I just made a sarcastic noise.
I like the fact that they went all in with it. In the fact that they made the card have no capital letters in it, except on the shirts of the guys in the art. But yeah, it's super unsettling to look at. But from a flavor standpoint, I think it's
very cool.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Really, really cool. And it gives it -X, where X is the number of capital letters in its rules text, not reminder text, which is in parentheses and italicized, just in its rules text, which, depending on the card, there could be quite a bit, because if it's very wordy, it might have multiple sentences, or if it references its own name, that's in capital letters. Mm-hmm. So things like that, I think that's really awesome. I just don't appreciate the lack of capital letters. That's a me thing.
It's a personal thing.
Yes, but I appreciate the flavor and why it's there.
I definitely appreciate the flavor. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's why I figured I'd give you the chance to talk about it, because we spent some time talking about it even after we read about it, because it's so cool. It's very unique. And it really shows, as Mark put it, that you get to play with every aspect of the cards when it comes to unstable. In a black bordered set, you wouldn't be able to do that, because you don't talk about the rules text. You don't talk about the text box, right? That's not something that gets manipulated. In older unsets, they talked about the artist. You don't talk about the artist in a black bordered game, but in a silver bordered game, it makes perfect sense and is hilarious that
And
you get
it's
to.
awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Hashtag Vorthos pride.
So yeah, I really appreciate all the different fun flavor things, which again was why we as Vorthos and on this arguably Vorthos only show, it's why we're doing this review of an article that arguably isn't Vorthos. It still talks about flavor of cards and things like that.
Yeah, I mean it's mostly about gameplay, or sort of how anti-gameplay these cards are, and how to play them effectively.
Right.
But because it's an unset, it's got so much flavor that it just inherently will be all over this article.
Yeah.
Enough for it to be Vorthos content enough for us to review it.
Correct. Which is why we'll be back next week and the week after. But we're not done this week yet. So the next card is the countdown is at 1. And now, if you haven't seen the cards yet, you still might think that sounds familiar because it references back to Baron von Count from earlier.
Which is probably one of my favorite cards.
Baron von Count.
Yeah.
He's really cool. And I like the fact that you can manipulate the art in what you're doing, because the numbers 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 are on the art of the card, and that's where you put the counter to move it from 5 down to 1 incrementally so that you can try to destroy target player. But the countdown is at 1, references Baron von Count, but is its own card, and follows the tradition in Magic, the kind of shied away from tradition, but tradition nonetheless, of playing a Magic sub-game during your game of Magic.
Which I think is so cool.
It is cool. I think it's cool as well. And you playing a Magic sub-game, in the past, Shahrazad just made you play a sub-game. Then you had Enter the Dungeon, which was from Unhinged, which made you play a sub-game under the table as you entered the dungeon.
Which is hilarious.
Brilliant. Although, to be fair, I've been in many game stores, and I am not naming names, but some of them do not keep the floors clean. And so I am grateful that I don't have to get on the floor anymore to play games of Magic. That game started you off only at 5 life for Enter the Dungeon. This one, the countdown is at 1. I'll give you one guess as to what life total you start at. But I think that's really cool. Again, it follows the trend, and Mark talked about that. That's how I knew enough about Enter the Dungeon. I knew Shahrazad offhand, but Enter the Dungeon, I'm actually surprised he didn't mention, and maybe I'm just not remembering what the card does well enough, but I'm pretty sure Karn's Ultimate as a Planeswalker makes you play a sub-game as well. I could be wrong. I'm going to go check after this. I should have checked before, but I don't do my research because I'm a terrible person. But I
usually don't before Jar either, so.
But I do think that Karn did that as well, and he didn't mention that. Not that it needs necessarily to have been mentioned, I'm just saying. But anyway, so that's the countdown is at 1. I thought that was, again, talk about flavor and the reference back to a legendary creature within the set that is pretty good and pretty popular, so it's cool that there's a card referencing him, or at least talking about him.
Yeah.
2 more to go from this article that we are talking about. First is Cramped Bunker. This card makes me laugh real hard. It's an enchantment. You put it onto the field, and every one of your opponent's upkeeps, they have to put a card, a permanent, that they control onto Cramped Bunker, and it has to not be touching any other permanent. And then if they can't do that, you sacrifice Cramped Bunker, I believe, and all cards that are not on Cramped Bunker are destroyed. Super awesome. Also, Cramped Bunker was by Richard Garfield. That is also awesome, because Richard Garfield is back to do the Dominaria set, which is coming out 2 sets from now, at least at the release of this article. which we're obviously very much looking forward to, because how are Vorthos not looking forward to going back to Dominaria? But regardless, Richard Garfield had that card idea, and brought it to Dominaria, and they were like, Richard, this is not going to work for Dominaria. And Mark Rosewater was like, I know where it can go, and he just took it. And, I mean, just from his writing, he really just made it seem like, I got it, and he just grabbed it and ran away, which I'm sure is not the case, because it's Richard Garfield, and that'd be super rude.
Right.
It'd be super rude if it wasn't Richard Garfield, but still, grabbing it.
But in your head, you can imagine Mark Rosewater grabbing something from his hand, running away, and him just going, okay.
Yes, I can absolutely imagine that. It's why it's so funny to me. And if you have not seen many videos with Mark Rosewater in them, yeah, that is definitely...
You're not really getting a true sense of what we're trying to say.
Yeah, and you should do that. It's a good time. And the last but not least is Crowstorm. First of all, before we talk about Crowstorm, though, I do want to point out to Amy, even in my notes, I put capital offense as capital letters. Notice that?
Yeah.
Because I have to. I had to do it. I can't leave them as lowercase. Anyway, Crowstorm is the last card that... I have a problem. Crowstorm is the last card that we're going to talk about, that Mark talked about this time. And it's I am aware, as a Magic player, of what Storm is. I have never stormed out. I've never gone off with Storm, but I've seen it many times. I understand how it works.
I've stormed out, often. Unrelated.
Yeah, no, totally. Not in a game of Magic. Just been upset about something and walked away. So, Storm Crow was a card, and now and it allowed you to go look for other Storm Crows, but now you have Crowstorm, which makes Storm Crows, and the card has Storm.
I don't get it.
Oh, I love it. I'm sorry that you don't get it.
Explain this to me a little bit more.
I tried to explain it to you earlier, but Crowstorm allows you to make a Storm Crow, but that's what the card does. It allows you to make a Storm Crow.
But what's the appeal of a Storm Crow?
Well, it's a flying creature. I mean, flying creatures in and of themselves are important, but you make a flyer, the 1/2 flyer. Mm-hmm. But Storm says, so if you played Crowstorm, and it's the first card you play at the beginning of the turn, then congratulations, you've made a 1/2 Storm Crow. But if you play Crowstorm, I'm going to mess this up a million. I'm trying so hard not to mix them up. Oh my god. Which, thanks, Wizards R&D. This is great. When you play Crowstorm, you repeat the process of making a Storm Crow for every other spell that has been cast that turn.
Okay.
So there are still limitations, because you have to have mana to be able to have cast other spells and then cast Crowstorm to make Storm Crows. I'm still getting there. But if you can do it where you can play a 1-mana spell, a 2-mana spell, a 1-mana spell, whatever, you can make multiple 1/2 flyers, and going wide with flyers is a very good limited strategy.
Right.
It has always been that way.
I can even say that.
So Crowstorm seems like it would be a lot of fun, but it had to be silver bordered because its Storm in and of itself is too good of a keyword to be put into a standard legal set again. These are Mark's words, not mine, because it is very breakable, where you can just storm off, storm out, whatever, and make it so that, you have like an eggs deck, and you're like, I'll play this, crack it for mana, crack this for mana, use that mana that I just made to play something that brings everything back from the graveyard, crack those things for mana again, and just play a million spells, and then play something with Storm, have that card repeat a million times, and now you have 100 Storm Crows from Crowstorm, and then you pass, your opponent goes, and then on your turn you swing for 100 with 100 different creatures. It's too good. It's very breakable. And so for that reason, it had to be in unstable. Now, Is there a way to break it in unstable? Possibly. Do I know what that is? No. Am I a good enough player to realize it? No. If I see it at the time, maybe, but I can't look at the cards in the set and be like, ooh, it's just this one and this one and this one. But also, I feel like I also would have seen it online if that was the case, so I don't know. I don't know offhand.
If you guys know, leave it in the comments.
Let Joe win at the unstable events that he goes to by telling me in the comments how to do Crowstorm correctly. And I think I said it correctly. Let me know if I did. Anyway, so that's it for this week. A little bit of a lighter, fun, I mean, this is great. Towards the end of the year, you want to have some fun, talking about fun cards and Unstable. I'm looking forward to being able to actually play some Unstable, hopefully, possibly, maybe this weekend. We shall see, because the set does release. We're working on getting a box of Unstable to open on the channel. I know, how dare you open a box of Unstable without actually drafting it? Trust me, I'll be drafting plenty, but I want some of these cards for myself, including those full art lands. Let's not kid ourselves. Because they are gorgeous.
They don't have bundles for it, do they?
No.
Gosh darn.
No, because it's like a master's set or you know what? It's like Conspiracy.
Yeah.
Where it's solely made to be drafted, and there are many people out there who will be upset if you open a booster box of it to not draft it, but bring on the hate, because I just want to crack into the set, look at some cool art, name some cool cards, and go from there. So, but regardless,
and like you said, you're gonna draft a ton of it. As well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's just that it's a little harder to put that on YouTube.
Agreed. It's not impossible, and some people better than we have done it, but we have the one camera, and it's a different discussion for a different time, and I'm not going to get into it, but Magic has released a lot of product recently, and it's really annoying and frustrating. And so anything that anyone has wanted to do relating to money, who is not independently wealthy, which if you are, congratulations, that is not, there is no hatred here from me. Yes, there is no hatred here from me, but I'm not that guy. And so we don't have the funds to be able to purchase the equipment needed to be able to do that. Again, not salt, just a statement. I would love to draft some Unstable in person, on camera for all of you. It's not going to be maybe way in the future if that's where we're going, but regardless, I encourage you to look it up. I think Game Night's Command Cast just put out a video of it. I have not gotten a chance to see it yet, so I can't give you my actual review on it, but I do know that they said that it took them a very long time to put it together. So with all of that work, I'm hoping that it's good. And I can't recommend that you check it out, but I do know that it exists, and so I'll shout them out, because why not?
Why not?
So guys, I really hope you enjoy playing Unstable. Please let us know what you think of the set, what you thought of our review, what you thought of the articles, and if you get to play, what you think of playing that set in the comments down below.
I was going to mention that it's kind of cool that they're putting out a lot of product and fun product.
Fair.
Just because the gift boxes were crap.
Oh, that's not even what I was referring to, but yes, the gift packs are crap. And yet, if you want to see us open some, check out the channel. But regardless, no, that's not even what I'm talking about. Iconic Masters, the treasure packs for buying boxes, Unstable.
My point is, if you're trying to give a gift to someone who enjoys Magic, any of those things would be better than the gift pack.
Buy their entry into an Unstable draft.
Oh, yeah.
I think that'd be awesome. I mean, what is it, $15-$20, depending on the store you go to? That's a great gift.
Yeah, and that's a really great price for a gift.
Yeah. And yet you're not buying. I mean, they get 3 packs worth of cards for it, plus any prizes that they win, but they get the experience of going and drafting the set. I think that's a brilliant thing.
Why don't you give yourself one as well?
Well, I mean, hopefully you would at least go with them to enjoy their gift with them. But yes, if you can play also.
Don't necessarily know how to play, because it'll still be entertaining to watch a draft.
Yes.
And Unstable.
And if you want to encourage them to draft the better than one uncommon, if they see it, they can make you their partner and kind of walk you through it, and then you get to play Magic kind of by default, which is my goal with this one. If we get to go to drafts together, so if you're watching and you're going to be in a draft with us, if I get a better than 1, you better believe this is my partner. So you better watch it because Amy is a master of Magic the Gathering.
Nope.
I was like, I don't know how she's going to respond to me saying that. That was good. All right. So, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us again here for another episode of Jar. As we showed off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
That's right. And we liked to do it. Sometimes
Yes.
if a story is a little bland and boring, we're still showing it off, but we're kind of down a little bit because the story was down.
The tone of the video is a bit different.
For the rest of this year, though, I feel like we're going to be on a nice high. And
Hopefully.
We're going to end the year, by the way, spoilers. We talked about it a little bit on Twitter today, but we're going to be doing our best. We did it last year as well, but we're going to be doing our best at the end of the year to be doing our top X list. We haven't decided if it's going to be 5, 10, whatever, of the Magic stories. We've reviewed them all. Now let's put them together in a list and talk about what great stories there were this year. Maybe we'll talk about
what made them great, of course.
Yes, and why and when and etc. And what we liked about them, and we want to hear your lists as well.
Right.
Save it for that video if you like really, really want to tell us, sure. But I would say save it for our video. I don't necessarily want to be influenced anyway because we want to make our own list. But stay tuned because, like I said, for the next 2 weeks we have the rest of this article, parts 2 and 3 to review, and the week after is when we'll be doing our final
top 10
top
or
X
top 5 or
top X review for the year for 2017 because that will be the last jar of 2017, so it's just fitting. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. You can check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Those links are down in the description. As always, you can click on our logo to subscribe, find out when all our videos come out. This has been Jar on Geek for All. I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.